very often when we discuss literature in Sweden, we talk about you as being an immigrant writer.
Yeah.
But for me, there's a big difference between immigrant literature and refugee literature.
Yes, absolutely. And, because one journalist asked me to write a paper about a refugee. And I said, I know what, I know what a refugee is. But actually, when I started writing, I didn't know what a refugee, the differences and the nuances. And of course, the first reflex I had was to open up a dictionary. Because, I don't know, it's very inspiring to read the dictionary, as a starting point. So I looked at the word réfugié in French, and by pure accident, right, I saw that it was under the word refuge. And refuge meant, and I didn't know what refuge meant, really, And then it described that it's somewhere, it's like a shelter against danger, and it's temporary and all that. So I go, oh, okay, so refugee is something temporary. You're running away from a danger. And I said, so what is an immigrant, right? Because in our mind, we're all confused, refugee, immigrants, migrants, all of that. And so I went and looked for immigrant. And it's right under the word immeuble. And immeuble means a building. And then it describes immeuble, right? And that it's something that is anchored, is solid, not movable. And I said, that's the difference, because immigrant is, when we first arrived in Malaysia, we were a refugee. And when we arrived in Canada, we were an immigrant, meaning that from that point on, we could start growing roots. This is a new land, this is a new soil where this, whatever we were could start growing again. Whereas a refugee is a temporary place that you cannot set foot. And what is a refugee? A refugee is someone who has been ejected from the past, but not projected in the future. And the present is totally empty of meanings. Because when we wake up in the morning, we know why we wake up, right? We go to school, we go to work, we have a friend to see, we do grocery, whatever. There's a meaning to time. But when you're in a refugee camp, the time has no meaning. You wake up to what? You don't know when you're going to eat. You don't know when you're going to leave that place. You don't know what you're going to do. So your time is totally meaningless. So the present is empty. And so that's what a refugee is. And I think it's very difficult for a refugee to write. Even. I think it's almost impossible, because you don't have anything left. You don't have the past, the future, or the present. So you need to become an immigrant in order to write, I think. But now, maybe I'm wrong. There must be many books out there written by refugees. But I think it's a different, well, in my case, because it didn't last for long, I was a refugee only for 4 months. But as we know now, there are children who are born in these camps and become adults in these refugee camps. So maybe for them, they have never known anything else other than refugee. And so maybe they can write as a refugee, as this status of, being always ephemeral, always temporary, always in a shelter instead of a home. And so, to me, there's a big difference. And I hope that we'll read more about refugee books. I hope that there are books, written by refugees and being published so that we can understand how it is to be, I was going to say, to be nowhere and to be nothing. Right? You don't have identity cards, you cannot have a passport, you're not... And, when we first arrived in Canada, under citizenship, we were nationless. when do you get to be nationless? Right? You move from one country to the other, you apply for visa, you go somewhere. It's only when you're a refugee that you're nationless. Mm-hmm. And the planet as it is organized today, it's very funny that feeling that you're not part of anywhere,
no,
of any society, of any civilization.
You don't belong anywhere.
Yeah,
no.
And I think humans are made to belong somewhere, to be part of a group. And so when you're not, it affects you, I think. And so the longer we leave children growing up as refugees, I think we are creating a war against ourselves as humans. Because every time, and the problem with the status of refugees is that when you're in a camp and somebody gives you food, a truck arriving and distributing food, you are so grateful because finally you have food. But often enough, food is being thrown on dirt, right? Because there are no tables, no chairs, no counters. So food is right there on the floor, on the soil. So you bend down and you pick up that fish covered with dirt. I don't know why, but a part of you dies. Dignity dies a little bit every day. And in some camps, trucks cannot even stop because it's too dangerous. So food is only thrown out of the truck. And sometimes it's being dropped by a plane, right? So when you have to, I don't know, pull out your hands and hoping to catch something, some food, I don't know, but part of us dies. And this is the dangerous part of being a refugee. You stop being human. You will end up stopping being human. And when you're not a human, you lose also your humanity. And what will happen next?
But as you say, I think the conditions in the camps make it almost impossible for people to write. So what we have today of refugee literature, if we should call it that, is written by people who have, like yourself, have
yes.
rooted somewhere, who have become immigrants
and citizens.
Yes.
And I would tell you that if I was not a Canadian, fully Canadian, 200% Canadian, I wouldn't ever, I wouldn't be able to write this book this way. Impossible. Because I know that the way I write is with the eyes of a Canadian.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, because if you ask my parents, who are still, I would say, immigrants, even though we've spent exactly the same amount of time in Canada, 40 years, they had never really integrated themselves into society, even though they speak French, they speak English, but friends and activities, they're still not comfortable, right? To go to plays in French, even if they understand, the reality cannot touch them, right? And so I consider that they're still immigrants, whereas I and my brothers have become citizens, Canadians, 200%. And if you ask them to write exactly the same stories, they would write it from the point of view of an immigrant. They would never be able to be light about it, or to see the beauty in the horror or atrocity, because they are the horror. They lived in that horror. They are the living witness of atrocity. They cannot. Whereas I'm just an observer from the outside. And the only difference between a Canadian and I is that I kind of touched it a little bit. So I know horror a little bit more. And, I have an intimacy with atrocity. So I can talk about it. But from the outside, never from the inside. So that's the difference between an immigrant and a citizen. right?
Oh, this is interesting because I met, before we had a talk at Bokmässan in Gothenburg, I met a Vietnamese woman by chance on the street. And she said, "Oh, you're the woman who's going to talk to Kim Thúy.
Oh,
Please tell her that she tells the story of us, all us who can't speak," she said.
yes.
And this is why she is so immensely important to us.
Yes, and some, that's the best compliment when I get from a Vietnamese person who come up and say, "You've told my story." And I said, "Oh God, so I've succeeded at not telling, a small story, but maybe a common story of all of us." But with one older man, he was in his, late 70s. He wrote to me and he said, "You have considered, that a country could be remembered by a smell." Because I talked about bounds and how it brought me back to Canada and how I felt my first banks of nostalgia because of a smell. And he said he cannot allow himself to talk about his country, Vietnam, that way, because it was so heavy when he left it, and it was so dark and yes, so intense that he will never be able to talk about that country with any light in it. And so he said, "I envy you that you can be so light about this." And I said, that's my privilege to be a Canadian, to arrive in a country young enough to really have your roots down and to have that Canadian blood flowing in me, right?
You were 10 when you came
Yes,
to...
yes. And it was, I think it's not even the age almost. It's, of course it's the age, but and I was older. 10 is old, considering my brothers who were 6 or 7, but the way that we were welcome changed everything. You could imagine we arrived from a country at war. It was all dark. If there's a color, I would tell you that it was, red and orange and whatever, the color of fire. And then we arrived in a camp where we slept on dirt. So it was the color of, dirtiness. To me, it was just a period of dirty. Everything was dirty. We didn't have access to water. We had infection everywhere. And so it was horrible, another dark era. And then we arrived in Canada in the spring, but there was still snow everywhere. And it was virginal, it was white, it was not even white, it was luminous. You're just like, and snow is luminous, right? It's not white, it's because of the lights and all of that. And then we got out of that bus, and I felt like the whole city of where we were was there, on the other side of the door, waiting for us. And they were all tall and big in winter coats. So to me, it was like a forest of giants. You go like, "Oh my God, where am I?" Fantasy island. We got out, and the first cultural shock that I had was that they picked us up, held us, in their arms. And for Asians, that's not something you do. You don't express your love or affection so openly, right? So physically. And so that was the first shock. The second shock was that we were, disgusting, with lice in your hair, with diarrhea, with infection. You just find yourself so disgusting. And these people did not hesitate, not even one split second, to take you in. How could that be, right? We would not even touch ourselves, and they hugged us, right? And then the third shock I had was that in the camp, we didn't have water or electricity, so of course you don't have a mirror. So we had not seen ourselves for a long, long time. And so you don't remember what you look like, right? But the first time I saw myself again was not in a mirror, but it was in the eyes of these people. And they looked at us as if we were treasures falling from the sky. And so I looked at myself in their eyes and I said, I had never been this beautiful before. And I've never become beautiful again like that. Because in their eyes, it's just purity. It's generosity at its purest form. There was nothing else. They were just taking in broken pieces, you know, and just trying to give us as much attention and love as possible. And that was the moment where I became Canadian. It was not 3 years later. It was on minute 1. You fall in love. And when you fall in love with someone, what do you want to do? You want to learn the culture, you want to learn the language, you want to be with them, you want to be inside them, around them, you know, on top of them, on what? You just want to be part of this. And so you become Canadian instantly. You don't need any laws, legislation, convincing. You don't need anything. That's it. That first moment of love, right? And it's a big thing for a country to accept a refugee. Like I said, when you don't have the past, the present, or the future, there's nothing left in your eyes. And there's a picture of us in the camp, the 13 of us. And if you look at those eyes, there's no potential. Knowing what I know today, of the 13 of us, what we have become, you know, ordinary people, dentist, actuary, lawyer, manager, IT person, you know, that's just normal professions. Knowing this, I still say, I don't know how the Canadian agents could pick us and believe that we could become something, because we were dead. There was nothing. So when a country takes in a refugee, it's a bet. You don't know if that plant would grow again or not, because it's a dead plant that you're taking in. You take in, and because of the soil that we are being put in, will grow again, right? So you don't know if it become a potato, an apple, or a carrot. You don't know. You just take, you know, it's a bet. But most of the time, and if I'm a country, I would make that bet. Because most of the refugees who have made it, of course, we don't all have the chance to cross the sea and survive. But if you do survive, you've crossed the sea with hunger, with fear, with all of that. And then you hit a wall, and you hit a border, and you still survive. And you walked hundreds of kilometers with your child on your back, or even losing a child, yeah? Very often you become more than human. You become a superhuman, you know, psychologically and physically. So as a country, I would take the refugees just to strengthen the genes, you know, because they are superhumans. They don't get sick. They don't get, nothing, right? They become, they can work 20 hours of 24, you know, and so these, I don't know, people do become superhuman. And like myself, I was born with so many allergies, like fish, seafood, milk, the wind, the sun, eggs. I couldn't do anything, and I was crying all the time because I was a weak child. But after the boat trip and the camp, where if you don't eat fish, you die. You know, that's all you have. And the fish was rotten and everything, but you have to eat it. And now I've lost all the allergies. All. I'm not allergic to anything. I live in Canada, and I used to be allergic to the cold in Vietnam. At 28, I would swell up, right? Oh. But now I'm in minus 30, and I'm still going, right? And so I have become superhuman just because of the trip. Not because consciously I wanted to be stronger like an athlete, where you have to train yourself to become. No, I just got stronger because of the fear, because of the experience, because of that whole thing. So I've lost all the allergies, and I wonder what would kill me today. You know, I think you can put me in any situation, have me eat anything, and I will still be going. I believe you, Kim. Yes. And I think this is why we can take in. And also, we should allow ourselves, when we don't know where these people come from, to be wary, you know, to not be open right away. It's okay, it's normal. Because when you look at our eyes, it's scary because there's nothing in there. But just make that extra step. Open it with one question, with one handshake, and then the spark would come back. And most of the time, these people are worth investing in, you know, betting on. Yes, of course, there will be some bad seeds, you know, some plants that will not grow, but most of the time they will grow because they survived everything else, right? So, yeah, so that's my view of it. Very often, you know, I would give this example, is that these 13 people didn't even own a hut where we slept in. And the hut was built with old rice bags, right? And today, these 13 people, the common fortune is somewhere $25 million or something like that. And then I think there are two ways of interpretation. The first one, you say, okay, these 13 people have stolen from our country $25 million. Because if my brother is not a dentist there, then the patients would go to another dentist, right? It's logical. Mm-hmm. Or, like Canada, you can take the position saying these people have created $25 million, has enriched this country of $25 million. And the danger, again, is that both explanations seem logical. Mm-hmm. And they are, mm-hmm. right? And so it is about us taking position. Which one do we want? And I always said, you know, without us, you don't have beef noodle soup. So you want the Vietnamese. Just for the beef noodle soup, it's worth it. Right?
And anyone who's eaten pho knows that this is really true.
Yes, like hummus.
Yes.
Hummus didn't, you know, nobody knew about it 25 years ago. And now hummus is industrialized. It's sold in any supermarket. Everybody knows pita bread. But 25 years ago, it was a very fancy thing, like pita bread. What is that, right? And so now we have so many choices, just in terms of food. We're not even talking about ideas, because each culture, right? Each language brings a new way at looking at life, a new angles, a new solution, a new interpretation. So we do enrich, you know, ourselves when we are surrounded with different opinions, different, different traditions and different cultures. If we put them all together as one, I think. Mm-hmm.
Now this is exactly what we're talking about in Sweden at the moment. You know, we have, as in the rest of Europe,
everywhere,
the right-wing waves,
yes,
sweeping through our country, and it's so sad.
And it's logic, you know, and that's the thing. We should listen to those who are scared, because they are right to be scared. What we need to do is create a conversation, an encounter between the two. And then we realize that we're just a human with another human. And then there's that moment of love. And all of a sudden, we're walking on the same path. But if there's no encounter, we'll continue to walk on two parallels. And at one point, we'll continue to be scared of each other. And there's nothing worse than fear. Fear will make us think, you know, not the wrong way, but unhappy. And unhappiness would lead to, I don't know, so many bad things, right? So I think as a government, as leaders of a country, what you need to do is how to make these encounters happen. How about having a list of volunteers and having a list of those newcomers just to greet someone at the airport and show them around, okay, how you get which school your child should go to, how to get a driver's license, where you can go learn the language of the country where you arrive. Just that. The first 24 hours, you have a list. You know, like when you rent a house somewhere, and then you go in, and then there's a list saying, okay, the supermarket is on your left, the police is on your right, the post office is in front. Just that. It makes you feel at home right away. So maybe we can do that for a newcomer. That is oh, this country is so nice. That's how, you know, the first impression. They always say that. We only have one chance to make the first impression. And I think it's possible. It's not that complicated. Just that. It changes everything. Because as a refugee or an immigrant, you arrive in a new place. The scariest part is that you don't have a network. You no longer have an aunt, a friend, you know, a colleague where you can call and say, hey, you know, where do I buy sugar? You can't. There's nobody. You cannot. And so the danger is if you don't have anybody, you would look for your community, right? You will look for someone who can help you, who can speak the same language, who is like you. And that's where you start creating a ghetto, I think, right? Because we always choose what is the easiest, right? It's like, oh, you speak the same language as me, maybe you can help. Instead of trying to explain in English or in Swedish or in French, sugar, and then the other person, what are you saying? It's sugar, da, da, da. And then you have to start saying, oh, you know, put in coffee, sugar. And so it's more complicated and longer, of course. So you would choose something easy. And that would take you to, you know, to a path where you don't get into the society where you arrive, I think. And yeah, that's the most difficult part for an immigrant when you arrive in a new place. You don't have a network. You don't know where to start looking for a job.
But you created a network.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
No,
your family did.
Yes. But, you know, because of the place where we were, we had all these Canadians coming, showing us, you know, taking us by our hand where to buy a mattress, where to rent an apartment. And I still remember this hotel where we landed because my parents couldn't go to the French class. Because they spoke French already. And if you don't go to a French class, you don't get the salary as a student. And so they were basically, out of any revenue, right? So the director of that hotel, instead of just giving them money, what he did was he created a job for my father to clean the emergency stairs of the hotel, meaning the job didn't exist. He didn't need anybody to clean the emergency stairs, right? But instead of giving him money, he gave him a possibility to have the first job so that he can have a second job and a third and a fourth and a fifth, right? And also giving him back his dignity. It's not only I'm giving you money, I believe you can do something. Okay, so this is the job, right? And my mother, it was the same thing. You know, she had never cleaned, even hold a broom in her life before we arrived in Canada. And the first job she had was a family who hired her as a cleaning lady. And then she went there and she came home the first day in panic because she said it was so clean, there was nothing to do. So she spent an hour she said there was maybe one piece of dust. That's it, but everything was so clean. And then we understood later on that the owner of the house cleaned everything before my mom arrived. And then the next time she went, that family invited us over for dinner first. After the cleaning. But then there was nothing to clean, so we only cooked and eat together. And so we created mess so that we could clean up together, right? So it was also their way of giving my mom money, but with dignity. we, you know, instead of just handing money, we're giving you a job. And because of that job, she could put down on application, yes, I work for this person, and so the company can call for reference, say, oh, was she a good employee? And I think she was a bad employee, but the person said yes, you know, she was very good, she arrived on time, and so on and so forth. And that's how we started standing up again. Right? So I think it's very simple. It's very difficult, but simple at the same time. It's in the small gestures. We always think that we need to help with, you know, big projects, big ideas, but actually no. It's just sometimes just a look, the way we look at the other person, and then a small job that you give out, but it changes everything, right? So anyway, I don't know if you wanted to talk about this.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that. No, because I wanted to talk about this is because this being such a huge issue in Sweden today, and how to cope with the people who are scared.
Yes.
And all the people coming here who have all kinds of issues.
And they are also scared, you know,
yes,
everybody is scared.
Yes.
And so everybody panics, right? So the only way, and we know it, right? The only way to solve the problem is information. Get them talk to each other. That's it. And it's okay to be scared. And that also we need to say. Yes, it is a bet. Yes, it is scary. Yes, it's unknown. You know, you get 2-3 applications for jobs. And then the person says, I study in university, whatever, that you cannot even pronounce. And then the name, for example, the Vietnamese name, Nguyen, you cannot, you look at it, Nguyen. How can you... So how can you pick up the phone and call that person? You're already blocked. Right? So you're going to call a name, Linda or Tom or whatever, that you can right away. You say, hi, Mr. Brown, you know, I want to ask, where's Mr. Yeah? And then university, or whatever, you know, you had been a doctor to hospital. You don't know, you cannot. So of course we're scared. We're uncomfortable even. So the only way is that you call up and you say, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. And explain to, you know, could we just have a chat and see, you know, where you learn your craft and what did you go to school and who are your parents, and, you know, whatever. You start talking. Magic happens. But it's okay to feel that I don't know how to call. I cannot call this person. I don't know even how to pronounce his name. That's okay. And this is what we should tell people, that it's okay to be scared and not say that they are racist or they're discriminating. They're not. They're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable. Right? That's it. That's all. And it's okay.
But one way to get over this feeling of being scared and not knowing and not daring, I think, is through literature.
Oh,
so I
absolutely.
think you are doing such good work now. I mean, your 3 novels that are translated into Swedish, Ru and Man and Vi, are basically about refugee experience, but it gives a profound understanding for a person who is not a refugee.
I think I need to share basically these moments of beauty, right? And magic that happens when we open our hands. And that's it. That's simple. I didn't try to, I never thought that it could be of any use. I was just saying how beautiful it is.
And beautiful books you have written. But I think as you come, you tend to go back to the refugee story from one time to another. I was wondering, is there a feeling within you that you have a mission, that you you have to write this story because there are so many other people that can't express themselves the way you can?
No, because I'm just fascinated. You know, every time I said, okay, that's it, I finished. And then you meet up somebody who would tell you a new story of a new refugee, of a new strength, of a new superhuman. And you say, I have to share this with other people. How can I not share this? I've just met this soldier who's 86 years old and who had lived in the jungle for 9 years. And she's telling the stories about her, you know, having only 30 grains of salt as a ration per day. And then one, you know, at one point they ran out of salt, so she didn't have access to salt for many days. So your body start reacting. And then a male soldier still had 15 grains of salt, and he offered her the 15 grains of salt and asked for marriage. He proposed. And they got married and had 3 children. And oh my God, this is the most beautiful story. How can I not tell you about this? You know, how can I not share it with the world of human spirits and human love? This is a love story, right? And she said that these 15 grains of salt are more precious than any diamonds at that point in time. Diamond would not have saved her. 15 grains of salt did. You know, so this is what we need to hear, I think. Or this is what I think that you would find interesting. Yeah, so I share whatever I hear from other people. And so I'm always in admiration of these characters. Fascination. And I write just to share with you because I'm too excited and I don't know where to let the steam out. So they're into words.
But is this what happens? Do people come to you and say, Kim Thúy, I have a story to tell you?
No, I'll give you... Sometimes. But I will tell you that I was in Paris. I was already in the metro in front of the train going to the airport directly. All I had to do was to push on the button yes to have the ticket out. The ticket was 10 euros. And I said to myself, no, get out, go take a cab, which is 5 times more expensive. Go take a cab because you will meet somebody. Right? And of course, before I could not afford, you know, the 50 euros. But now I can. You know, I prefer that than going to a restaurant. I will save the money to go into a cab. Because very often, you know, the cab drivers are from elsewhere, are immigrants. And so I said, let's go out there and take a cab. So I had to go up with my luggage out of the metro station to wait for a cab. And then I got on a cab and as predicted, I met someone. I met this immigrant from Cambodia who had lived through the Khmer Rouge, you know, who has seen his father being beheaded right in front of him, and his brother who was wearing glasses, so he was considered to be an intellectual, beheaded right in front of them. There were 8 children, and they found themselves to become only 7, with the mother without the father. And then they were sent in the jungle for 2 years and separated, each of them in the different corners of the country. I can tell you, because we spent the whole hour in the cab, and I was so happy there was traffic because he could tell me more about his story. And so, you know, how can I not share this, you know, this story from this man living in the jungle as a teenager who has survived the worst kind of, torture to the whole country. When you kill 2 million out of 6 million, it's a genocide, right? And then to have the luck to find all his sisters and brothers again after 2 years and the mother. And I've left the country and arrived in France, and today driving a taxi. You know, and most clients probably don't ask him any questions. But I did, and so I got this treasure. I have all this, for me. But I cannot keep it all for me. It's too big. It's too fascinating. So I said, I have to share it with you. Can you believe it? He was saying that they ran out of bullets to kill even. So they just hit from behind with a shovel. So he has a friend in Paris with the head a little bit, crushed because of the shovel. And the soldiers thought that friend was dead. But then he survived somehow. And so I said, next time I come to Paris, I want to meet your friend. So I will have another story, another human, another superhuman to share. Yeah, so it's all about, I do a little bit go out after the stories. Because each of us has a story. Just to take time, right? And ask a couple of questions. And you can start with a very easy one. So, are you married? Are you with somebody? Are you in love? And then, boom, it opens up. The whole story! That's it, you don't need more. I remember one boy who was really, he was a younger man, and he was so, you could feel a lot of anger in him, and he was unhappy. And I was happy on that day. I just got off a stage of 10,000 people in front of me with so much energy, and then I went into that cab, and he was so, gloomy and, unhappy. And I said, no, I don't want him to ruin my moment, right? So I stopped talking to him, and then I said, no, this is why you have to share the happiness that you just got with this person who is unhappy, obviously. So I turned around and I just said to him, I said, you have the longest eyelashes I've ever seen. He turned around and he said, nobody has ever told me that I have beautiful lashes. I didn't say beautiful. No. This is what he thought he had heard, right? And I said, that's it. And then he started sharing his entire story. So sometimes just that is enough. Talk about eyelashes. And you have a story. Right? Oh, and so I think we all have, if we take the time, especially in a taxi, it's almost like in an igloo. How do you say that? Yeah? Mm. Confined space. You cannot go anywhere. You're stuck there. Instead of having your eyes on your iPhone, you stop and you just say something about the hair color, about the sweater the person is wearing. Just find that beautiful thing. One beautiful thing. Like Leonard Cohen, he said that there's a crack in everything. There you go.
So you go for the cracks.
You go for the cracks so the light can get in. You want to open that crack so the light can get in. Yeah, absolutely. I go for the crack. Be careful. But you're already all light. I don't know how I can put more light in you. But it's true, right? We all have that. And my crack is what I find beautiful in that person, right? And every single one of us has something beautiful. And so sometimes it's outside, meaning just an object, an earring, a cuffling, a shirt. Sometimes we cannot see the person right away. So it could be an object outside. But from that point on, you go into the crack and the light. It opens up. It's like popcorn. And then that driver with the long eyelashes, he didn't want to leave me at the train station. He said, no, I'll take you to the best shish kebab, whatever. I said, I'm late for my train. No, I cannot go for the best shish kebab. That was so funny. He said, no, don't buy that sandwich. I'll take you to the... No. So Yes, friendships, right? And it could be ephemeral, short, intense, and that's it.
No, it doesn't have to do with
The length.
the length or the duration of something. It's something else, I think.
Yeah. Maybe that openness, right?
Yes.
And because, and I do this because I have received so much from the Canadians who have opened up their arms to us. They, so many people have carried me from one stepping stone to the next and to the next, and to leave me here now in Sweden. And so I think I have the responsibility to give forward. So I have received so many gifts in the course of my journey here on earth that I have to give back. So, yeah, so especially those who are unhappy, I have to go in and share a little bit of that light.
Which you do also in your literature. So
Yes, it's the same thing.
3 books.
The only purpose why I write is to share beauty. To talk about all these beautiful moments and beautiful people and beautiful objects. There's so much. And that's the only purpose.
It's so interesting because, the stories are, as the stories about fleeing, about leaving a country and all the pain which goes with the experience of doing so, there's still so much light, there's still so much beauty. And this, perhaps, as you say, is only possible to write if you're one step from the very...
It's too far.
Yes.
It's impossible. We can't. Even me. I've been to a refugee camp. And I watch these, documentaries, and I try to say, come on, how come you don't remember? And you're trying to have this physical memory of the experience, and you can't. So how can you ask someone who was born in a peaceful country to feel anything? Impossible. So it's okay for them to not understand. This is what I'm saying. And you need to find a vehicle to take them there. I think beauty is the right vehicle.
Now I can see, if one reads your books, one can see how carefully you have picked out the details in order to make us feel, to make us see and feel and then understand what it's all about.
Ambitious, eh?
Very vicious. So this is, I think, a very a very clever way of getting us to understand an experience which is impossible for a person who hasn't been there to understand.
Yes.
But in some way one does understand because of
You
your
have
way
to
of telling.
almost like sensorial.
Yes,
you have to go through the senses instead of the intellect. Mm-hmm. The intellect cannot
process the...
No,
it's no...
So it has to be the small details that you have already done or seen. Then it can get into your skin, or under your skin. Mm-hmm. So that's what I try to do, to crawl under your skin.
And you succeed. You succeed so beautifully in Ru and in Man and in Vi. But you also succeed with something else, and that is to turn around the image of the Asian woman.
Yeah.
Yes. Because, here in the West, people tend to see the Asian woman as submissive and powerless. And we who have Asian backgrounds know that she's not at all submissive.
It's very dangerous. I always say to the men, don't fall for the Asian women. You will die without knowing. And you wonder, how come? All of a sudden I'm dead. Right? No, because I everything has, when we talked about cultures and different ways of interpretation, right? Here in the West, you are a strong woman if you have a voice, if you you make comments, you have opinions, you take positions, and you take up space, then you're a strong woman. Whereas in Asia, a strong person is someone that can retain all her emotions so that the person in front cannot read and cannot reach you, right? And you remember all these old paintings, the mouth of the women is always just a tiny little red dots, right? Because you cannot read anything on that face. And that's the strength, right? Martial arts. It's about, you know, disappearing or being invisible, or and so strength is interpreted in two very different ways. And that's why if you look at an Asian woman from the outside with the interpretation from the Western world, then you think this is submission. But actually, no, you cannot reach that. You cannot read and you cannot reach that person. You don't know where you can hurt her. You don't know where you can make her happy. So if you don't know where you can make her happy, you cannot take it away from her. Right? And so when you are like you and me, we have both hats. We can play on either one or both, right? And yeah, so and both of them are strong. Both women or both, I would say, people, right? Those who speak loudly or those who are, I would say, emotionless. They are both strong, and both of these strengths are great tools, right? But you just need to know the different interpretation. That's all. So that's the beauty of it. When you know more than one language, more than one culture, you get to see the world in so many different ways.
But I also think this is a great way through literature to understand other cultures. I mean,
yes. It's
when one
travel,
reads
right?
you, one understands that these women are in fact the pillars of their families. Mm-hmm. They are the people carrying the others.
Yes, and
through.
Holding your... You cannot move if she doesn't want you to move. But on the surface, I'm serving you tea, but actually try to move and you die. Tea will be spilled on you all over. Right, so yeah. And yeah, maybe that's one of the ways. Well, movies, arts, all of these things, right, help us to, and even just to eat with someone from a different culture, then we learn right away. I was gonna say, I have so many examples of where just, and that's why when I travel, I always love being invited in somebody's home. Then you feel like you have really visited the country or the culture. If you go only to a restaurant or outside, it's about the same everywhere nowadays. Especially you have Starbucks everywhere, right? Yes. And you have the same Lipton tea everywhere. It's so disappointing, but right. So you need to be in someone's home to finally understand how society is organized, how that culture works, right? And so yeah, maybe yeah. All the time, I prefer eating at somebody's home.
And now you're here at my home, which makes me very happy.
And I'm so spoiled, just coming here and see books in your bathroom. You have a shelf. You have a shelf. I think I will imitate you. This is what I'm going to do.
Please do.
Yeah, because right now they're just lying, like a little bit on a counter in a cupboard. In the bathroom, next to the toilet bowl. So now I think, yes, why not build a real shelf and say, yes, we do read in here.
We were discussing food, and food is also a great part of your books.
Absolutely.
There's so much emotions connected with food and eating.
And this is where Asian women are dangerous, is that I think we cook a lot, right? And we always, because we don't know how to verbalize our emotions, so we cook. But in my case, there's one more thing. I think we have the opportunity to play with their memory, to create souvenirs in their mind. If you make a spaghetti sauce at home, because you are the first spaghetti sauce that they eat, they think that this is the best. spaghetti sauce, right? And they will always look for that spaghetti sauce that you make. And then after that, you know, you just create, you know, that same sauce over and over and over and over again. You occupy that memory. That's it. They are stuck with you. They love you forever.
And your spaghetti sauce.
Yes. So, you know, but because when do you get to create a memory for someone? It's very rare.
It is. But I think food is. As you say.
So you use food as a tool to create a memory. So that person, the next time that they eat a spaghetti sauce in a restaurant or anywhere else, what do they say? Oh, this is not like my mom's. So you cross his mind or her mind, your children's mind. Just thought about your mom. Yeah. So that's why I cook so much.
And now you even made a cooking book.
Yes. But it's a cookbook that is not really a cookbook. There's so many little, so few recipes, only 50 or so. Because first I want only the simple, you know, doable recipes, so that people can, even if, you know, you live in a small village in Quebec, you can still find the ingredients and you can be Vietnamese or cook Vietnamese. And Vietnamese food, of course, is about fish sauce. If you have that bottle, it's the work is 90% done. The next step is herbs. If you can find fresh herbs, right? Because Vietnamese food is not about spices. It's really about raw herbs that we eat at the same time. And the blend is in your mouth. It's not in the pot. Very often you would how would you say it? Make the sauce first and then you just eat. The blend is already done before you eat. But the Vietnamese food, you have to, we rely on your own tongue to create that perfume or aroma. So you just mix up so many herbs, and it's very rare that you would eat a dish without a plate of herbs next to you. And the beauty of herbs is that from one bite to the next, it's never the same. Because it's never the same intensity in the leaves, it's never the same quantity, you know, proportions and all. So you just pick up, you eat, that's one aroma, right? Or one mix. And then the next bite, it's a different mix, and so on and so forth, right? And in one bite, you might have a little bit more coriander, the next one a little bit more basil, the next one a little bit more mint than basil and coriander, but it's a cocktail, right? And especially when it's fresh herbs, you eat it, once that you swallow, you have the last bouquet. You would have all the perfume stay in here, and it's a different experience than when you were chewing in your mouth. So that's Vietnamese food. And also because we don't use butter, milk, we don't have it, and so it's more it's very healthy, I think, as a diet. But this book is more a homage to the women of my life, meaning my aunts and my mother. They are 6 sisters and 2 brothers, and maybe because I'm aging, I'm 50 now, so I feel like I might, you know, they are aging as well, so I might lose them, you know, soon enough. And in a normal family, you have your aunts, you have your cousins, you know, you take for granted that they're there. They will pass away, accidents or diseases, but exceptionally, but otherwise they are there. You can count on their presence, right? But the fact that we lived through this war experience, we never thought that we would get to see each other again. Every time that one of us left, that was it. We never thought. And then I have this luck to have all of them very close by, and we still have the same intimacy or proximity, and we see each other very often, and they've given me so much. And I said, this is luck. this is my luck to have this destiny, to have all of them around me. So while they're still there, I should present them to you, because this is the proof of miracles for us to all be alive and living nearby each other and still together. So this is just a proof of that, of the strength of human, you know, of I don't know, of life. You know, that sometimes life is horrible. It's so cruel most of the times. But sometimes it's beautiful and it's kind and it's generous to us. And I've been lucky enough to get a lot from the generous side of life.
But you've given back a lot too.
I try. Yes. Because if you keep it all to yourself, it might explode. You know, I think if you have too much beauty, your heart has a limit of space, right? And if you keep on going, wow, I think it'll explode. So you have to share.
It's such a beautiful book because it's a sort of an essay book, isn't it? It's an essay book and a cooking book at the same time, and it gives so much more than just a cookbook, because it's not a recipe book as a.
Because I'm not a chef.
Well,
so I cooked. I cooked. I cooked a lot, and I did cook for a restaurant. You know, for my restaurant for 5 years. So after 5 years of practice, you do get better. But I'm not a chef, because a chef would invent, would create new. How would I say it? Combinations. Whereas here it's just traditional, something that any Vietnamese can cook with their eyes closed and their hands bound. Simple food. So in 15 minutes, and you get it done, really. For all the working moms and working dads out there, it's really 15 minutes, and you should have a very healthy meal at home. And I think it's important to cook, because when you walk into a home and you smell something in the oven, it could be bread, it could be rice, it could be just lemongrass. Just chop them up and leave them on the table, and then the children would feel that you did cook. And then you bring out all the sushi you bought. Right? But I think it's important to create that memory of what a home is, I think. I don't know how to decorate. I'm very bad at decoration, and to turn a place into a home, that I don't know how to do. My husband is very good at it, but I don't know. So the only moment where I can turn a place into a home is cooking. And that's why I cook all the time.
It's the best way of turning a home into a home, I think.
Right? Because it's difficult to turn a place into a home, whereas your place is a home. You see life, You see life. Like in your bathroom, you have Teletubbies. And I know you don't have babies anymore.
No.
So basically, that's a story of a family,
yes.
Right? That the children have grown up, and the souvenirs are still there, right? That's a home. Because a hotel, you would never find Teletubbies in a hotel. Well, I hope. Right? Traces of life, right? That's what a home is. And yeah, so that's why when the oven is too clean, I don't know, I feel like it's not a home. It's too perfect. Don't clean. Not so much. Like a perfect table is not interesting, right? You want to see these traces, the scratches, and then you go like, there has been life on this table. People have eaten here. People have played here. People have maybe fought here and discussed, and you see life. Otherwise, a perfect table, you're like, it has been in a store, and that's it. Nobody has ever done anything around that table. So yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's beautiful to be in a home, and to know that Teletubbies is also in Sweden.
It's international these days,
I know. It's like the only song I can see.
Yes.
Tinky Winky.
Don't trigger me.
We have all been brainwashed. So yeah, so it's not a cookbook from a chef. It's far from it. It's really an introduction to Vietnamese food and to my family. But only, I don't know how to say it. Yeah, it's not only about my family. I just see beauty in time in these women who have survived, you know, these horrible challenges. Yeah, just, you know, it is possible for us to survive.